Regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Pia S. Cayetano would lead the chamber in prayer.
Let us bow our heads. Almighty Father, we praise and glorify your holy name. You are our source of strength and wisdom, and so we seek your guidance and providence as we gather here today to begin another week of dedicated service to our fellow Filipinos. May you grant me and my colleagues the proper judgment to govern with integrity, righteousness, and a deep concern for the people's welfare. Empower us to work with diligence and dedication so that every success on our part may bring you glory and honor. Lord, we also remember the late former President Fidel V. Ramos, fondly known as FVR. We pray for his family and loved ones and a nation that grieves for him. May you welcome him into your kingdom and allow us as a nation to remember him and be inspired by his dedication and love for his country. We continue to pray for the safety of our entire nation and the world. In the midst of these trying times, we remain faithful that your great plans will reign. We lift this all up in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Let us remain standing for the singing of the Philippine national anthem.
Bayang makinig, dalas ang silanganan, alam na puso, sa kanya mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyan ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulubi, di ka masisingil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong baka, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang istak ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagtinilig, ang bituin ng araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw, dalawa ang ating pagsinta, buhay ang langit sa piling mo. Ang ligaya dapat may mga api, ang mamatay lang dahil sa'yo.
Secretary, may please call the roll of members.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
With 22 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Before I recognize the majority floor leader, may I take this opportunity to greet the mama bear of the Senate, no other than Senator Cynthia Villar. Happy birthday, ma'am. Happy birthday. Majority leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, we'd like to ask for a minute suspension to greet our Mama Bear, our principal, a very happy and victorious birthday. And so I move for 1 minute suspension.
Is this a 1 Senate minute?
1 Senate minute suspension,
Move
Mr.
for a 1
President.
Senate minute suspension. Motion approved.
Journal of the third session, Wednesday, July 27, 2022, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, we'd like to acknowledge and recognize the presence of our guest in the gallery, former Mayor Edgardo Flores of Minalin, Pampanga, Mayor of Mexico, Pampanga, Mayor Teddy Tumang, Vice Mayor Vince Flores of Macabebe, Pampanga, Councilor Edgar Sichon of Minalin, Pampanga. They are here right now in our gallery, Mr. President.
Welcome to from the great province of Pampanga, the mayors of Pampanga. Welcome to our Senate chamber.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, there's a clamoring request, Mr. President, from our colleagues
caucus.
regarding our caucus.
Yes.
So,
Just a reminder to our colleagues, yeah, we'll have a caucus, and that's where we will continue our 1 Senate minute suspension. We will have a caucus to discuss some important matters, after which, when we come back, we also have to elect our Senate Sergeant at Arms and honor the former President Fidel V. Ramos with a resolution when we come back after the caucus. So the motion is to suspend, Majority Leader?
yes, Mr. President.
Session is suspended for 1 Senate minute.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we now proceed with the election of the Sergeant at Arms. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? The chair hearing none, the motion is approved. We will now proceed with the elections of our Sergeant at Arms of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I humbly ask that Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa be recognized for the nomination.
Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader.
Senator De La Rosa, you recognized.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, good afternoon. The rules of the Senate states that the Sergeant at Arms shall be responsible for the security and maintenance of order in the session hall, antechambers, corridors, and offices of the Senate, whether in session or not, in accordance with the orders of the President or the Secretary. We need someone who can protect not only the 24 senators elected by the people, but also the 1,436 Senate employees and all who visit the Senate, Filipino or not. We need someone who is brave. It is my honor to nominate for the position of Senate Sergeant at Arms one of the bravest men I have ever had the privilege of knowing and working with, retired Lieutenant General Roberto Angcan. Preceded by an illustrious and well-decorated military career, Lieutenant General Angcan may easily be equated with the assignments and position he has been given. I can choose to enumerate all his assignments and the awards and citations given to him. However, the post he has occupied and the awards that he has received hardly do him justice, Mr. President. Today, in this nomination, let me pay tribute to him through a story of his nobility in character, a story of his strength. Mr. President, when I was the provincial director of Compostela Valley Province then and now, Davao de Oro Province, Lieutenant General Angcan, then a full colonel, was the brigade commander of 10 Offers Brigade. And there was one time that one of the Army and Capgo detachment were attacked by the CPP-NPA. And the men manning this detachment in somewhere in Mungkayo, somewhere in Pasian, Mungkayo, Davao de Oro, were asking for help. They were asking for reinforcement because they were beleaguered. They were surrounded, and they were almost overwhelmed by the attack staged by the NPA. So I decided to make the necessary reinforcement. So I prepared my troops and ready to give the reinforcement. When I called up Colonel Angcan, I told him, "Where are you?" He told me, "Sir, I am still here in New Bataan, farther than your location, because my location was at Nabunturan, Davao de Oro." So I told him, "Okay, mas malapit ako, mauna na ako mag-reinforce, sunod ka na lang. Dahil yung mga bata mo doon sa detachment, talagang humihingi ng reinforcement. Baka maubos yun." Sabi niya, "Sir, hindi pwede, sir. Huwag kang mauna. Dapat akong mauna dahil delikado, sir. Sigurado maambos ka doon." Sabi ko, "No, huwag kang mag-alala. May dala akong one company na Special Action Force and one company of Provincial Mobile Group. So, laban na ito pag kami inanbos." Sabi niya, "No, sir, please, hintayin mo ako." Sabi ko, "Malapit ako, mauna na ako." Sabi niya, "Sir, hindi ko kaya, hindi ko kaya na konsensya ko kapag ikaw ay naambos. Kailangan ako ang mauna." Sabi ko, "Gawin mong kaya mong gawin, basta ako, I have to move." So, nauna akong nag-move, Mr. President. Papunta na ako doon sa encounter area. Yung aking convoy, we were constantly communicating with each other. Sabi niya, "Sir, please slow down. Huwag ka munang pumasok, sir, dahil sigurado ko, ambusin ka, sir. Kasi kami, Mr. President, yung aming movement doon sa Mindanao, kapag if you are the commander, hindi po pwede yung commander na in the convoy, nasa gitna ka, o nasa likuran ka. Ang tawag sa iyo ng mga sundalo doon ay salto o kaya talawan. Kaya ipakita mo talagang siga ka, you have to lead the convoy. So ako, I was the provincial director, ako talaga nanguna sa convoy. The same is true with the General Angkan, talagang siya nanguna sa convoy niya. So ang NPA, alam na nila kung sino talagang tatargetin una. Yung lead ng convoy dahil yan ang commander. But we have to, that's the norm, that's the culture of the troops in the field. Pag commander ka, huwag kang patago-tago sa gitna, huwag ka sa likuran, sa harap ka talaga. Now, while I was going to the detachment that was being attacked, here comes the convoy of General Angkan. Sir, permission to overtake. Nauna siya. Overtakean niya ako. Sabi ko, sige, mabuti nakahabol ka. I don't know paano niya ginawa yon. Pinalipad siguro niya yung mga sasakyan nila. Wala namang helicopter. Pero talagang ang layo ang hinabol niya para lang talaga hindi ako madisgrasya. Nag-overtake siya. Minutes later, doon na, nakarinig na ako ng putukan. Unang putok, pak! Tapos sunod na, pak, 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 pak. Grabe na ang volume of fire. Yung first shot pala na putok, that was a sniper fire. Sniper fire, siya ang tinarget kasi nasa front seat siya ng kanyang sasakyan. Colonel Angkan was tinamaan dito sa main artery ng kanyang liig. Ang main artery, yung loob ng sasakyan niya talaga puno ng dugo. Ubos na yung dugo niya. Hindi man siya basta-basta ma-withdraw namin dahil busy rin kami sa enkwentro. Ang kalaban, ang dami, nakaabang sa amin sa kalsada. So, it took a while bago namin siya na-retrieve doon sa sasakyan niya. Nung na-retrieve namin siya sa sasakyan niya, dinala namin sa, yung may maliit na hospital sa Compostela banda. Pagdating doon, tinanggalan namin ng combat boots. Nakita ko puting-puti na yung paa niya eh. Yung paa niya puti-puti na meaning, wala na dugo, loss of blood na. Sabi ko, mamamatay na itong bata na ito dahil wala na, ang daming dugo na wala. So, tumawag ako ng helicopter, ng Air Force, at na-evac namin siya papuntang Davao City. If you can recall, Colonel Angkan, habang kinakarga namin sa chopper, sabi ko sa kanya, I don't know how to thank you for taking the bullet for me, for taking that M14 bullet from an M14 rifle for me. Maraming salamat. At ikaw tinamaan, hindi ako. Ganun po ako nagpasalamat sa kanya. But ganun na lang yung mata niya, ganun na lang. Sabi ko, hindi na ito abot na hospital, mamamatay na ito. But I was very thankful and very sad because magkasama na kami sa academy. In PMA, I was 1 year ahead of him. Pero kumo pareho kami mga Bisaya, palagi kami nagkukwentuhan. That's how we know each other. So, yon, Mr. President, literally and figuratively, General Angkan took a bullet for me. Ganun po siya kagaling at katapang na opisyal. So, Mr. President, certainly, Mr. President, if one consider General Angkan's career, one cannot help but admire him for all his achievements. Imposibleng hindi siya hangaan. Imposibleng hindi tayo bumilib sa kanya. His own hometown of Victoria City in Negros Occidental cheers him on, being the very first Victoriahanon to reach the rank of general in the AFP. And yet, as we share and listen to the stories about him, we come to understand that admiring him is simply not enough. We see him for the man that he is. He is a man who is selfless and brave, or more precisely, one who is brave because he is selfless. Moreover, we realized how fortunate we are to have General Angkan with us to be responsible for maintaining security and order here at the Senate. To say that he will fulfill his duty is an understatement. for I know that he will willingly go above and beyond his function as he has always done. And so, Mr. President, in making this nomination, I am not simply nominating General Angkan for the position of Senate Sergeant at Arms. I am more fundamentally nominating an honorable man for yet another opportunity to exercise selflessness and by extension, utmost bravery. So, General Angkan, if you're listening, huwag mo ako ipapahiya. You will be securing and protecting 24 of the most high-profile government officials after the President and the Vice President. Itong 24 tao na ito ang pinaka-importante sa buong Pilipinas because we are nationally elected. At alam mo na, this is the last bastion of democracy, itong establishmento na iyong gugwardyahan. So, maraming salamat for for answering the call. As I have told you, yung tinamaan ka, hindi ka pa mamamatay dahil may mission ka pa dito sa mundo. Tayong dalawa, may mission pa. Tingnan mo, naging senador ako, ikaw maging sergeant at arms. So, may plano pa si Lord para sa atin. Mr. President, that's all for my nomination to General Angkan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much for that insightful and wonderful nomination, Senator Bato. May we recognize also the distinguished gentleman from San Juan, Senator Estrada.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield to some questions, Senator Bato?
Mr. President, if I may, Mr. President, just to put on record that this is
Nomination
a
speech,
nomination speech, but the gentleman
Man
from
from San Juan.
San Juan would like to ask, I think, just one question.
Yeah.
With the experience of our dear senator from Davao, Senator Bato de la Rosa.
I would like to put it on record that I am not opposing the nomination of the
General
nominee.
Angkan.
Gentleman, General
Angkan.
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 Okay, Mr. President, may I know how old is General Angkan?
How?
How old? I think young 1 year or younger siguro ni Bato, Senator De Rosa.
56? He's 56, Mr. President. He has just retired from the service.
May I know how will he secure the 24 senators, the staffs, and all the employees of the Senate?
I believe, maybe to answer the question, my dear colleague from San Juan, I was the one who...
Since Senator Bato is very close to the nominee, I guess he can answer my question, Mr. President.
Okay, please proceed,
Do you know how
the
he can
gentleman
secure
from Davao.
us 24 senators while in the Senate building?
In the Senate building, Mr. President, General Angkan has secured the whole Visayas area. I think
Iba po
he can
yung-
secure this building, Mr. President, because per his experience, I was very successful. I just would like to give the good gentleman from San Juan a very good example of how good General Angkan is. When he was the Visayas commander, Mr. President, that was the only attack conducted by the Abu Sayyaf that was successfully repulsed by government troops. Yung umatak yung Abu Sayyaf sa Bohol, na nahuli lahat yung Abu Sayyaf na pumasok sa Bohol. That was during his time when he was the commander of in that area. So, I think...
And if I'm not mistaken, I would like to put on record our distinguished colleagues, he also led several peacekeeping missions for the Philippines. He was in 2 different countries, heading our peacekeepers in 2 different countries. So he's very well experienced in defending fortifying positions. So I think he would be a great asset to this institution.
May I know what measures is he going to implement with regards to what stricter measures Is he going to implement,
Yes.
Mr. President?
With the permission of the body, I had a short discussion with him last week. It was a short discussion, really. But what caught me by pleasantly surprised was he had a plan of action on training our OSAA, getting the proper equipment, putting a plan in action into place. And that's what sparked my interest with General Angkan, not to mention that he's a fellow Ilonggo. I'm also originally from Negros Occidental. And that actually piqued my interest. And then when I talked to General General De La Rosa about it, being that General De La Rosa knows almost all the active and newly retired personnel, when he told me about the story of General Angkan that went beyond and above the call of duty, talagang willing to take a bullet for his superior officer at the time, not even a superior officer of the military, because he was in the PNP, just an upperclassman, and for the good of the personnel on the ground, ay talagang napabilib din ako. And I felt that this was the man in charge. And I'd like to also put on record, gentlemen, General Angkan would be the highest ranking retired military officer to join us as Sergeant at Arms at Lieutenant General. So it is an honor for us in this institution for him to accept the position. This is since 1988.
Mr. President, have you interviewed him?
Yes, sir.
Since
Yes,
it was Senator Bato who recommended him to you?
No, actually, I was the one who mentioned in fairness to Senator Bato, he had one other person that he recommended, but not to mention the name anymore of the general. But when I mentioned the name of this gentleman here, he stood up from his chair and he said, okay na yan, okay na ako sa kanya. And I said, why? Because he took a bullet for me. And then that's when we had a long discussion, of course, kwento, no, kunentuhan niya po ako kung anong nangyari sa kanya. And I said, well, maybe this is the fellow for us.
I hope he can also take a bullet for all of us, not only Senator Bato.
Yes,
Mr.
I am
President.
sure. I do not doubt it 1 minute, sir. I mean,
Well,
we
if,
thank him for his long career, illustrious career in the military.
If it is the recommendation of Senator Bato and because of his long stories about the nominee, I rest my case, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And also, he was also head of Westmincom, Visayas Command. I think he was
Biscom.
also-
Visayas Command.
Biscom, yes. So, magaling ito, magaling ito.
Baka
I will
pwede
not
niyo
embarrass
ipakilala
the
sa amin,
Senate
Mr.
with my
President.
choice. I'm sorry.
Baka pwede niyo ipakilala sa amin.
Oh, yes, of course. I will, after the oath-taking, we can have a 1 minute suspension para makilala po ninyo si General.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. President, there being no other nominations, I move that the period of nomination be closed and that we elect Lieutenant General Roberto T. Angkan as Sergeant at Arms of the Senate. I so move, Mr. President.
Before I act on the motion, I would just like to put on the record that I am very honored that the good gentleman, General Angkan, agreed to accept our proposal to be the Sergeant at Arms of the Senate. I'm sure that we'll go down to right away to business, and we'll ask also the good General, our new Sergeant at Arms, to make sure that your mandate is fulfilled by protecting not only the 24 members of this institution, but also each and every member of the Secretariat as well. And, in these challenging times, si Prime Minister Abe, who we actually honored here a few days ago, out of nowhere was attacked, and he was a retired member of as Prime Minister of the Japanese government. So we have to really take cognizance of the fact that these are challenging times. And that is why we pick the best and the brightest. And I feel this gentleman here is one of the best and the brightest. First of all, I thank him for his service to the nation as a member of the armed forces. You bled for this country, and we salute you for it, sir. And we are honored to have you with us. So there being no objection to the motion of the distinguished gentleman from Bulacan, our majority floor leader, Lieutenant General Roberto Angkan is hereby elected Sergeant at Arms of this institution, our Senate. may I ask and request Lieutenant General Roberto Angcan and his family to ascend to the rostrum to take his oath of office. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, sir.
I, Lieutenant General Roberto T. Ancan, Philippine Army retired,
Having been elected as
having been elected as Sergeant at Arms
of the Senate,
of the Senate,
do hereby solemnly swear
do hereby solemnly swear
that I will well and faithfully discharge,
that I will and faithfully discharge,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
the duties of my present position,
the duties of my present position,
and of all others I may hereafter hold,
and of all others I may hereafter hold,
under the Republic of the Philippines.
under the Republic of the Philippines,
That I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the Philippines.
the Constitution of the Philippines,
That I will obey the laws
that I will obey the laws
and legal orders
and legal orders
and decrees promulgated by the duly constituted authorities,
and decrees promulgated by the duly constituted authorities,
and maintain true faith and allegiance
and maintain true faith and allegiance
to the Republic of the Philippines.
to the Republic of the Philippines,
That I impose this obligation
that I impose this obligation
upon myself voluntarily,
voluntarily,
without mental reservation
without mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, General.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. May we ask for a minute suspension so that the good general can meet the members of the Senate.
Leader, proposed Senate Resolution number 72, taking into consideration PSR number 73, 74, 75, 76, and 90. So moved, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 72 is now in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I request the Secretary to read the title of the measure? So moved, Mr. President.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Proposed Senate Resolution number 72 by Senator Juan Miguel F. Zubiri. Resolution expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate of the Philippines on the death of Honorable Fidel Valdez Ramos, 12th President of the Republic of the Philippines from 1992 to 1998.
Mr. President, the status of the measure is that we are in the period of sponsorship. May I ask that we recognize the Senate President himself, Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri, to sponsor this resolution. I so move, Mr. President.
Senate President is recognized to sponsor the measure. Senate President Zubiri.
Thank you very much to our dear Majority Floor Leader. Yesterday we heard the sad news that our I would say one of the top statesmen of the country had passed away. And today, we honor the life and legacy of one of our brightest leaders, a military man, politician, a statesman of the highest order, whose mark upon the nation reverberates to this day, long after his term in Malacanang. President Fidel V. Ramos may have left office almost a quarter of a century ago, but the way he discharged his duties and dignified the presidency will stay in our memories forever. He is one of our most distinguished military men. Imagine, Mr. President, serving in the Korean War, and later as Chief of Staff of the 1st Philippine Civic Action Group in Vietnam, Your Honor. So he's a veteran on both Korean and Vietnam War. By 1972, he was named Chief of the Philippine Constabulary and then Director General of the Philippine Integrated National Police, before being appointed as Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces in 1986, and then ultimately as Secretary of Defense in 1988. As President, he brought his military mind to the table and set the benchmark for hard work and discipline, standards for boldness, and the template for fast action and quick results. Kung meron pong trabahador ng Senado, ito po'y trabahador ng bayan. I recall that he used to start his meetings, Mr. President, at 4:30 in the morning until the wee hours at night. And these were the driving forces which allowed him to preside over an economic boom, which was a series of reform measures emancipated consumers from bad service and poor choices. He smashed protectionist laws, monopolies, and trade barriers, ensuring that our people will no longer have to be under the mercy of just one telephone company or one airline or one power company. His reforms also paved the way for the IT revolution that soon allowed the Philippines to join the rest of the world in the shift to mobile communications. He also ditched the orthodoxy that only government can do the big-ticket projects. It was his watch, and I recall this very clearly, Mr. President, it was his watch that the Build, Operate, and Transfer scheme of building infrastructure was institutionalized, which freed and continues to free public resources from harnessing private capital. So if we were able to travel smoothly on expressways today, or on the information highway, or to other countries, courtesy of 1 peso sales of tickets, then we have President Ramos to thank for. Much has been said about his Philippines 2000 program and his vision of socio-economic progress for the country, resulting in an emergence as an Asian tiger cub of the 90s. But alongside this, I wish to stress that he did not only work to bring prosperity to our people, but also peace in the land. He understood, perhaps more than any other Philippine president before him, or since before him and since then, that there is no real progress without peace. The adversaries he vanquished in war, he went on to engage on the negotiating table as well, not only to talk about terms of their defeat or incarceration, but on how they could rejoin and contribute to society. He won peace the way he won battles, by seizing the high ground or the moral one. In the case of settling conflicts, he met rebel groups eye to eye, respecting their struggle and their cause, and offered not temporary truce but permanent peace. His call, Mr. President, for peace succeeded because he came to the table with the best credentials, that of a warrior tired of war and who longed for peace. His condition was simple. He only wanted their guns silenced, but never for them to be silent about the injustices, the poverty, and the oppression they perceived in society. Instead of guns, President Ramos urged them to pursue their solutions peacefully. And I clearly recall, Mr. President, it was during his time that the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao was created before the BARM. And that is when they elected autonomously their own leader to lead their land. And I believe it was during his time also that when the MNLF struck a deal with government for permanent peace. Mr. President, we in Mindanao will always hold him in high regard for his initiatives towards peace. And as a legislator, I do not think that the Bangsamoro Organic Law would have been possible without the foundation of peace deals he laid out during his presidency. I cannot even imagine, Mr. President, if he did not push for these peaceful efforts and we didn't even push for a peaceful setup like the ARM at that time. If we did not have ARM prior to the BOL, I think Mindanao would still be in the midst of war at this point in time. On a personal note, my dear colleagues, I also hold a dear place in my heart for our former president who took me under his wing as a member of Lakas CMD when I was just a young upstart. I am forever grateful to have had the opportunity to learn from him as I entered public service for the first time. Look at me there, so young. I had just won the elections. Pwede pa ako mag-co-starring sa mga pelikula ni Senator Jingo Estrada. So, and I learned a lot from him. I think most of the work ethic that I've been doing to this day, I learned from him as a president. I admired his work ethic, Mr. President. He inspired us more by his actions, less by his words. He is imprinted in the memory of a no-nonsense, tobacco-chomping action man who was an effective leader on the battlefield as he was making decisions in the cabinet meetings. As a paratrooper, he could jump from planes on cloudy days, on moonless nights without seeing the terrain. But as president, he would never jump to conclusions without getting all the facts at hand. He was, I think, one of the first consensus builders we had in government at that time. He set his eyes on a vision for the country and worked without fanfare to get us there. In his last State of the Nation address in 1997, he said that the greatest accomplishment of his administration had been to bring back the Filipino sense of self-respect and pride, of faith in ourselves, and of the confidence in the future. And that is completely true, Mr. President. I remember in 1987, I was a young businessman when we hosted APEC meetings here. World leaders had come from all over the world. We had new infrastructure in place. It was quite a proud moment for Filipinos. It's like we have arrived in the international scene. I clearly remember those days, Mr. President. This was just before the Asian crisis. And before the Asian crisis, we felt like we could conquer the world with our Asian Cub status. He believed, Mr. President, strongly that we have what it takes to better ourselves and give our children a brighter future they deserve. He imagined a better country for all of us, and he willed himself and worked himself to the bone to realize it. The result was that he left the nation better than we found it. We joined the country in mourning the passing of this great, peerless leader, and our sincerest condolences to his family. Although we are made poorer by his passing, he left behind a rich legacy and lessons that will serve us well if we heed them, so we can finish the grand dream that Fidel V. Ramos envisioned for the country he loved so much. And in closing, Mr. President, I'd just like to put on record that the good former president was a yearly blood donor to the Philippine Red Cross. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian can attest to this. he continued to give blood even though he was not allowed to give blood anymore, because once you're reach a certain age, we no longer collect blood from senior citizens. And he refused that particular rule and still continued to give blood to the Red Cross. That's how much he wanted to participate in the bloodletting campaign of Philippine Red Cross. I'm sure if Senator Dick Gordon would be here, he would be probably one of the first to stand up and honor the man as well. So we will sorely miss him, Mr. President. And I think he is one leader that is not polarizing. He's loved by all sides. I think all sides love the gentleman, love the man. And once again, we give our deepest condolences and sympathies to the Ramos family. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, for a very eloquent speech. You were his favorite congressman along with Speaker Smoking Joe de Venecia. Yes. We now would like to recognize the Majority Leader for his tribute to the late President.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. We filed PS Resolution number 73. Thank you for acknowledging that. Mr. President, dear colleagues, malungkot po ang araw kahapon nung marinig natin ang pagpanaw ng dating Pangulong Fidel Valdez Ramos. Nakikiisa po tayo sa lahat ng ating mga kababayan sa pagluluksa sa pagpanaw ni dating Pangulong Fidel Valdez Ramos. The 12th President of the Philippines and the leader that ushered the nation into the new millennium through his vision of the Philippines 2000 as a newly industrialized country left a space that no one could fill. Sino nga po ba ang makakalimot sa mga salitang, kaya natin to, na may kasabay pang thumbs up sign, a constant reminder that the Filipino can. His signature jump and the tens of push-ups he made even in his twilight years demonstrated that Filipinos are not weak or small people. I was in college, Mr. President, when I met FVR and he was running then for president. College student na po ako, Ginoong Pangulo, sa UST nung administrasyon ni Pangulong Ramos. At hindi ko po makakalimutan ang mga profesor ko, lalo na sa economics, kung papaano lagi nilalarawan yung ating bansa during that time at yung vision ng ating Pangulo noon bilang Asia's next tiger economy. And it's true enough that President Ramos was able to match his mantra and agility with economic performance. In the year 2000, the International Monetary Fund issued a report about the Philippines where it stated, and I quote, by 1996, growth had accelerated to about 6%. Inflation was down to 5%. And the external position had strengthened with rapid export growth and rising reserves. Close quote. At sa mahabang listahan ng mga kontribusyon ni FVR sa bayan, isa po sa tingin kong pinakatampok ay ang paglagda niya sa Republic Act number 7796 o ang TESDA Law noong 1994, authored by no less than Senator Edgardo Angara, the father of our presiding officer, Mr. President. Binigyan daan po nito ang makasaysayan at masayang pagbabago sa buhay ng milyong-milyon nating mga kababayan. FVR lived a fruitful 94 years of life here on earth and more than 50 years of dedicated service to the nation. Sa kanyang pamilya, mga kaanak, at mga kababayan sa Pangasinan, taus-pusong pakikiramay po. Nakikiramay po kami at ang buong bansa. President Fidel Valdez Ramos spent a life well lived. Generations upon generations of Filipinos will surely remember him. Salute, mission accomplished. May your soul rest in peace, FVR, and may God bless us all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Thank you for the mention of my late father.
Thank you.
Who is the next? There's a long list here before
Mr.
me.
President, we'd like to, there's a long list, Mr. President, but next in line is our Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Ligarda. May I move that she be recognized, Mr. President?
We move to recognize the distinguished lady from Antique, our Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren B. Legarda.
Mr. President, Complete staff work, or CSW. That was a mantra of President Fidel Valdez Ramos, and we all learned that from him at some time in our public and professional lives. FVR reinvented politics and the way he conducted extensive consultations with various sectors of our country, advocating for a cohesive culture, knowing how divisive Philippine politics can be. He envisioned the Philippines to be a society characterized by equity, tolerance, harmonious pluralism, justice, and full respect for human rights. Despite being a soldier, the 12th President of the Philippines veered away from brutal approach in dealing with armed conflicts. Instead, he advocated for formal peace negotiations, peace talks with communists and Moro separatists, and pushed for the repeal of the anti-subversion law. It was during the Ramos administration that the government peace panel signed major peace agreements with the National Democratic Front of the Philippines, such as the Hague Joint Declaration, the Joint Agreement on Safety and Immunity Guarantees, JASIG, the Comprehensive Agreement on Respect for Human Rights and International Humanitarian Law, CARIL. And I was a young journalist then, Mr. President, who covered all this, especially the talks which went on for several weeks in Indonesia, in Jakarta. In the face of crisis and challenges, FVR revealed himself to be a nation's true father, an indefatigable and disciplined public servant. I don't know of anyone who works such long hours as he, from perhaps 4 a.m. up to midnight. Amazing human being. He also focused on unifying our people. After winning the elections in 1992 as a minority president, is that what we call it, by a hairline, but steering the economy to become Asia's rising tiger. He sincerely desired to unify the country by means of peace, but waged an all-out war against the ills that afflicted our society and economy. FVR was a leader, accessible and reachable to those who desired to be seated in the highest position in government, as well as to any other elected leaders, regardless of political affiliation. He has demonstrated himself to be a leader whose heart is in the right place. And on a very personal note, Mr. President, FVR was the first person who encouraged me to run for senator at the young age of 37 years old. As a young journalist then, interviewing him at the Rizal Room in Malacanang when he broached the topic, do you want to run? I know you're a graduate of the NDCP, also his alma mater. And I said, no, please, hindi po. But then the rest is history. Mr. President, FVR's death is a loss to our nation. We as a people, we owe him much. I owe him much too. Having said that, we thank you, Mr. President, for your lasting legacy to our nation and our people. Rest in peace, FVR. We love you.
Thank you, Senator Ligarda. Mr. President, next to sponsors, the distinguished gentleman from Cavite, may he be recognized, Mr. President, Senator Bong Revilla.
Before I recognize the distinguished gentleman from Cavite, I mentioned to him earlier, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, my dear colleagues, the biggest picture in the office of the good statesman, Mr. President Fidel V. Ramos, was a picture of him together with Senator Bong Revilla holding the Philippine flag. He was very proud of that moment. Yes, the good gentleman from the great province of Cavite is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I stand before you and all our colleagues in deep sorrow as I sponsor my proposed Senate Resolution 74. Kahapon ay malungkot nating natanggap ang balitang pumanaw na ang isa sa pinakamahusay na pinuno ng ninilbihan ng tapat, matapang at masigasig sa ating bansa. Former President Fidel Valdez Ramos, or FVR, as he was called, passed away at the age of 94. Mr. President, it was President Ramos who convinced me to join public service when he invited me to Lakas NUCD, now Lakas CMD. Some 3 decades since, I have not known any party as I continue to be with Lakas as its present co-chair. So has our Chairman Emeritus FVR. We've been with Lakas through thick and thin. As Lakas has been with us. In the darkest times of my life, when I was in Krame for almost 5 years, FBR was by my side. He would send me books to read. Lagi niya akong pinapayuhan. Binibigyan ng pag-asa at katatagan. He was my first and true mentor when I forayed into politics. I was only 28 years old then. I was at the peak of my career, acting career, Mr. President. Sinasabi ko nga po bago ako pumasok sa politika, biro ko nga po sa kanya, sa pelikula, isang suntok, isang gulong, isang halik, ayos na. Masarap pa halik. Tawa pa ho siya. Sa politika, gagawa ka ng tama, gagawin ka pang kontrabida. But FBR made a strong impression on me when he said, Bong, utang natin sa mga tao na tumatangkilik, nagtitiwala at sumusuporta sa atin kung sino tayo. The opportunity to serve and give back is rarely given. Kaya pag dumating ito, there's no choice but to grab it by the horns. Mahal ka ng Cavite, ipakita natin ang pagmamahal natin sa kanila. Kasama ko po noon ang dating NBI Director, na dating Gobernador, at dati ring DILG Secretary Pemaco Velasco, nang una ko pong makaharap si FBR. From that movement, until I eventually ran for and was elected as Cavite's Vice Governor in 1995. And up to this day, FBR is an inspiration and an example I greatly look up to. Sabi pa nga noon sa Cavite, ang ibig sabihin ng FBR ay Fidel Velasco Revilla. His love for Cavite as his second home shined through our many collaborations. Alam po yan ni Senator Tolentino dahil naging constituent po namin si FBR at First Lady Ming sa Tagaytay. We work on projects together and envision a brighter and better Philippines for every Filipino. Yan pong tinatayo ngayon na Cavite LRT Line 1 Extension na naaprubahan ng NEDA noong 2000 under the GMA presidency was first conceived when FVR was president and his humble representation was governor of Cavite. Gayon din po ang sinisika pa rin natin ng conversion ng Sangley Point to an international port. Panahon niya rin po yan. Ito pong tinatawag na PPP o Conditional Cash Transfer. Una po naming nabuo na ipinatupad sa Cavite noong 1997 kung saan nagbibigay tayo ng tulong puhunan sa mga maliliit na gustong magnegosyo na siya namang ipinapasa ang kanilang nahiram sa mga susunod sa kanila. He was our country's centennial president at ako naman ang centennial governor ng Cavite. Kaya't nang sunulubong natin ang sentenaryo ng ating bansa na naging malaking karangalong ko po na gumanap bilang General Emilio Aguinaldo sa programa sa Quirino Grandstand. Hindi po matatawaran ang pamana ni FVR sa bansa. Ginoong Pangulo, sa pamamagitan ng kanyang pamumuno, ay umahon ang Pilipinas mula sa krisis na bumabalot sa bawat Pilipino ng mga panahong iyon. His presidency was not a walk in the park. His predecessors left insurmountable crises that not even them could have endured. He came to the power when the Philippines was just reeling from the aftermath of Luzon earthquake, strong typhoons, the eruption of Mount Pinatubo, and the Gulf crisis. And before he even began his term, the Philippines faced a crisis of insufficient electrical generating capacity. Natatandaan natin ang mga rotational brownouts na minsan mas nagtatagal pa kaysa sa oras na mayroong kuryente. He also inherited a chaotic time of rebels seeking to take power. Bangayan at Sigalot. It was a time when the forces wanted to take advantage of the disarray. He inherited the struggling economy and rising prices, and he had to take action quickly and not 1 second too late. It is true, many criticize the decisions he made as president. But make no mistake, he made these decisions only for the best of the nation. He was in an impossible situation. Kung hindi dahil sa kanyang matatag na pagdidesisyon, baka hindi na tayo nakabangon pa sa mga kinaharap natin na problema noon. FVR did not just dream of bringing the country to international prominence. He actually brought us there. Sa ilalim ng kanyang panunungkulan, nakipagsabayan ng Pilipinas sa ating mga karatig bansa sa pagsulong. Like the true soldier and leader that he was, he went to war, made the tough choices, offered no excuses, and never rested until his tour was over. It is not exaggeration that he never rested. Even in the golf course, Mr. President, trabaho pa rin siya, as many, if not all of his cabinet would attest. It was very difficult to have him as a boss because he was a perfectionist and expected no less from his men. He strived to ensure that things are not simply done, but done excellently. His Philippines 2000 was widely successful and one of the many highlights of his years in steering the nation to greater heights. He succeeded in establishing relative political stability after years of turmoil, producing economic growth and a reduction of poverty from 41% of the population, about 30%. Under his leadership, the economy surged and poverty rate fell through his social reform agenda. Maraming mga mahihirap ang nakatamasa ng ginhawa sa kanyang pamumuno. The average family income grew more during President Ramos' administration than in the previous 20 years. The growth of the country's gross national product, GNP, which was at 0.72% in 1991, rose to 8.42% in 1998. He broke monopolies that crippled the nation. He rehabilitated industry. The then ailing electricity sector was restored. he entered into major peace agreements with separatists, communist insurgents, and military rebels that helped mend decades-old wounds. Higit pa, siya ay isang true servant leader, a man for others. His undying service continued even after his presidency. Kahit natapos na ang kanyang termino, hindi nagwakas ang kanyang paninilbihan sa bayan. His mantra, kaya natin to. He became our country's North Star, from whom we derive strength and inspiration. Mr. President, simply put, FVR's legacy is the foundation upon which later administrations have built upon. Ang kanyang pamana, ang pagbangon ng Pilipinas mula sa pagiging sick man of Asia sa pagiging Asia's rising tiger. By the time we celebrated our nation's centennial in 1998, just about 2 weeks before he stepped down from office, the Philippines has down a 180 from when he assumed the presidency. His was a relevant presidency. He answered the problems with the right attitude at the right time. Kaya naman napakalaking kawalan, Ginoong Pangulo, ang kanyang pagpanaw. While his passing is a great loss to me, to my party Lakas CMD, and to those who personally know him, our loss does not compare to the loss of our country. The death of President Fidel Valdez Ramos, who was an international diplomat, a valiant soldier, and a champion in public and civic service, is a great loss for all the Filipino people. Mr. President, what we have is a borrowed life. Darating tayo sa panahon na tayo ay papanaw. Kung hindi man tayo matatandaan kung sino-sino tayo, ang mga nagawa natin ay mauukit at mananalaytay sa kasaysayan at sa mga tao. Si FVR, maybe the next generation may no longer know him, pero ang kanyang mga nagawa, his exceptional legacy, shall continue to be etched in our country's history and in our people's memories. As the whole country mourns his passing, we honor his life and legacy. He was one of the best. Rest in peace, my President FVR. Ipagpapatuloy at itataguyod namin ang inyong naumpisahan. Patuloy po nyo kaming pagnubayan at gabayan. Ang aming pong pakikiramay sa lahat ng inyong naiwan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to our distinguished colleague from Cavite for that very passionate speech.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next in line is next to sponsor the measure is the author of resolution number 76, Senator Win Gatchalian. May he be recognized, Mr. President. I move that for his recognition, Mr. President.
The good gentleman from Valenzuela, Senator Win Gatchalian, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I join this chamber and the entire Filipino nation in mourning the loss of one of her greatest sons, former President Fidel Valdez Ramos. Throughout his long and illustrious career, President Ramos displayed courage, honor, and patriotism. As a soldier, President Ramos fiercely protected our country from those who threatened its freedom. We saw this in his successful efforts to quash several coup attempts and when he served as our Secretary of National Defense. And while President Ramos was a valiant commander, he was also committed to the cause of peace. In 1996, he brokered peace in Mindanao by signing a peace deal with the Moro National Liberation Front, which that time brought 25 years of conflict to a close. Because of this, he earned for himself and our country the coveted 1997 UNESCO Peace Prize, a first time for Asians. But many of us would particularly remember President Ramos for presiding over the rise of the Philippines as a tiger cub economy in Asia. Through his socio-economic agenda, Philippines 2000, his administration pursued a wide range of reforms to boost the Philippines' global competitiveness and prosperity. His reform agenda covered economic liberalization measures, which included continuing trade liberalization, privatization, and the dismantling of monopolies and cartels. He also pursued institutional reforms that covered tax and custom administration, the bureaucracy, and the judiciary. From 1993 to 1997, the average gross national product was almost 5% annually, based on data from the Philippine Statistical Yearbook. The total inflow of foreign exchange into the country outpaced that of the combined periods of the two preceding administrations. The average income of the Filipino family grew more during the Ramos administration than in the preceding 2 decades. This led to the implementation of a comprehensive social reform agenda that addressed long-standing problems on poverty, health, education, and skills training, jobs and livelihood, and access to equal opportunity, among many others. By the time his term ended, the Philippines was at the point closest to breaking out of its image as the sick man of Asia. More than 2 decades have passed since President Ramos stepped down as president, and yet to date, we still look up to his administration as a model reformist government, and we continue to benefit from the economic programs that he espoused. I would also like to emphasize that it was President Ramos who signed Republic Act number 8526, or the Charter of the City of Valenzuela, which classified Valenzuela as a highly urbanized city on February 14, 1998. For signing our city's charter, we in Valenzuela will always be grateful to him. Let me also highlight how President Ramos solved a power crisis under his watch, when Luzon experienced as much as 10 hours of blackouts. Through the enactment of the Electric Power Crisis Act and the inception of the Build, Operate, Transfer Law, at least 20 new power generation plants were built, ending the power shortage crisis by December 1993. President Ramos continued leading a life in public service as an elder statesman after his term as president ended, even accepting the post of special envoy to China under the administration of former President Rodrigo Duterte. This goes to show his unwavering commitment to champion the cause of the Filipino people. The tributes that pour in from leaders around the world after his passing show the esteem in which he was held. He brought to the office of the President his outstanding work ethic, shaped by his distinguished career in the military and in public service. President Ramos led us with a steady hand and decisiveness at a period of great uncertainty for the country. As a soldier, he showed courage and honor in times of conflict and of peace. And for defending our democracy many times from its enemies, the Filipino people will forever be grateful to him. Again, I would like to extend my condolences to former First Lady Ming Ramos and the rest of the bereaved family. I am expressing my solidarity with the brave men and women of our armed forces who are honoring their former Commander-in-Chief. Lastly, I join every Filipino in celebrating the life and legacy of a true patriot and statesman who served as the 12th President of the country he loved and protected. For these reasons, I call on our esteemed colleagues to support the passage of this measure in honor of the late President Ramos. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to our distinguished colleague from Valenzuela, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Next to sponsor the measure is the author of Resolution Number 90, Senator Pia Cayetano. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
May we recognize our distinguished colleague from Taguig Pateros, Senator Pia S. Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in the next few days, we will see a deluge of much well-deserved praises for the late former President Fidel V. Ramos. I filed Senate Resolution Number 90 to honor FVR and to convey the Senate's sympathy on the passing of this great man. I quote from parts of my resolution. President Ramos' background and legacy of public service remains peerless. He was an honor graduate at the United States Military Academy at West Point, veteran of the Korean and Vietnam Wars, presidential assistant on military affairs, Vice Chief of Staff and later Acting Chief of Staff of the Army of the Philippines, Armed Forces of the Philippines, Philippine Constabulary, Integrated National Police Chief, EDSA 1 Icon, AFP Chief, Secretary of the Department of National Defense, 12th President of the Republic of the Philippines, peace and leadership advocate and statesman. Mr. President, President Ramos advocated for and was instrumental in the deregulation of key industries, the liberalization of the economy, the privatization of public entities, and encouraging the entrance of foreign investments. In fact, under his administration, we embarked on an ambitious development plan dubbed the Philippine 2000, which opened up the economy, encouraged private enterprise, invited foreign and domestic investment, and reduced widespread corruption. But beyond all of this, FVR was a friend, a good friend to the family. He would call my dad to play golf at his usual time, which was at the crack of dawn, for those who know him. My dad at that time was a private practicing lawyer, and he invited my dad to seek his counsel. My dad was an afternoon golfer, so that early morning in the dark call time was not his normal call time, but he gladly said yes to the president. So that's a photo of Dad, and that's actually Alan over there on the left side. And mapayat pa siya nun. Yeah, so you might recognize some of the people there. I'm pausing so our colleagues can laugh at Alan's photo, which for the record they are doing.
I just want to take note, he has a very nice looking mustache.
Yes. And he's not a golfer, so I don't know why he's there. My two brothers, my two other brothers, Ren, he's actually a June golfer, and I think was on the fairway many times with President FVR. And Lino was also a golfer. Si Alan, politiko, kaya nandyan. Ako wala. I was a private citizen. But I digress and I move on. As I was saying, no, my dad heeded these early morning invitations to play golf. And we knew that the president trusted his counsel, and it was just a matter of time that he made my dad his chief legal counsel. And so the next few years, this is a photo of my dad's oath-taking. I'm behind my dad, and not in the photo, that's why I'm very clear about the time. In another photo, but I couldn't locate it in time. I'm actually carrying my daughter who's barely 1 year old. That's why I know the timeline here. She was born in 95 in January, so that was in 1995. Midway through the president's term, he asked my dad to be his legal counsel. And it was a dream dad for my father. My dad loved being a lawyer, and he loved giving advice to the president. And I believe they still continue to play golf in the early morning. So a few years later, in 1998, the president asked my dad to run for the Senate, which he did. And the rest is history. My father was a senator from 1998 to 2003, and my father passed away in 2003. Shortly after that, I became the person to seek the late President FVR's counsel. Alan and I went to him and sought his advice on my bid to run for the Senate. So if I listen carefully to the earlier speeches before me, clearly he is instrumental, for better or for worse, for a lot of members being in this Senate today. Yes, may I put on record yung sabi ni Senator Amy, oo nga. Because it is true, a lot of people went to see him and asked for his advice. I'm curious, sino kaya yung in-advise niya na wag na lang, wala siguro dito sa Senate. Anyway, he continued to counsel my brother and I think Alan has his own share of stories. I continued to visit him, and I don't know, I'd love to hear if any of you have had this experience, or baka it's just my experience because it's my common bond with the president. May push-up challenge siya. Did any of you experience that, or is it just me because he knew that pareho kaming, si Senator Lito nag-thumbs up, so nasama siya sa push-up challenge. But interestingly, I was so game to take the push-up challenge, but I think I must have been in a skirt because for whatever reason, or because he just wanted to be a gentleman, he made my security perform the push-ups, and my security maybe was not that young, but not that old, maybe 50, but FVR clearly would have been in his 70s, and he performed it flawlessly. Like yung talagang push-up hanggang dibdib, na diretsong-diretso yung katawan. And at 10, he looked like he could go on and on. But that is a personal story that I share because he was a beacon of fitness. He was known to wake up hours before the crack of dawn to run for fitness. Like me, he believed that a healthy body produced or supported a healthy mind. And then, from what I know, he proceeded to devour the news. And then, only then, I think, would the sun rise, and he would officially start his day, which would still be earlier than many of us would be comfortable with. I know him to be such a hard worker, very demanding on, I think it was it Senator Loren who mentioned? Yes, complete staff work na, syempre, I'm sure panalangin natin lahat na senador sa mga staff din natin, no? Makinig tayo kay FVR, complete staff work. And I also heard stories na meron siyang mga small pieces of paper na doon niya sinusula, tapos dinudukot niya sa bulsa yun, yung mga maliliit niyang reminder sa sarili niya at sa mga kasama niya. And then years later, I would actually still see him joining races, running 5Ks and the like in races. So, I'm about to come to an end to my tribute to FVR. I then, around, I think, 2010, 2011, I wrote a book to honor my father. And this is the photo. I asked FVR to be the speaker, the guest speaker, when I launched the book. And it's called To Dream the Impossible Dream, because my father's dream was to serve his country. And in a large way, the late President Fidel Ramos gave my father that break to fulfill his dream, to serve his country. So this is me and my family. My father was no longer around, but I'd like to think that through the opportunities that the late President Fidel Ramos gave to my father and later to me and even to Alan, we continue to fulfill our father's impossible dream. And so let me end on this note. Interestingly, All my colleagues in the 18th Congress know, and for the new ones, if you don't know yet, you will know soon enough, that my passion is sustainable development, and the committee I chair is Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation, and Futures Thinking. And as I was reading through the late FVR's accomplishments, one of them is something that will continue to guide me today. He established the Philippine Council for Sustainable Development. Interestingly, and how many years ago was that, no? Hindi pa naninindigan si Senator Lauren for climate change. Nandiyan na si FVR for sustainable development. I mean that as a also to honor Senator Lauren. I'm just saying that the late FVR has been also doing this for so long. And let me just read a portion of that from my resolution. FVR established the Philippine Council for Sustainable Development to integrate sustainable development parameters in the country's development efforts to ensure that the country's economic agenda are not pursued at the expense of the environment. And when we speak of environment, it's not just the physical environment, but it's everything else. Human health, gender equality, and so on and so forth. So I end this by sincerely offering our condolences to the family and all the people who loved him, and I pray that he continues to be this tribute we have. I hope will be repeated again and again, if not for days, for months, for years to come, because he truly was an inspiration for our youth to emulate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you to our dear colleague from Taguig Pateros. And to add to what Ma'am Pia said, maybe that's why he lived to a ripe old age of 94, because he was such a health buff.
That's
Imagine
true.
donating blood as much as he can
That's true.
and doing all the exercise, and he used to,
And the discipline.
the
Your
discipline. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from Isabela, Senator Rafi Tulfo. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
The distinguished
So moved.
gentleman from Isabela and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Rafi Tulfo, is recognized.
Mr. President, unlike my distinguished colleagues, I don't have photos or slides to show, beautiful photos, because I never had a chance to meet the President, Fidel Ramos. Never had the opportunity. But just the same, I have a lot to say about the former president. And here it goes. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, yesterday, the nation lost a great leader who dedicated his entire professional life serving Filipinos both here and abroad. During President Fidel V. Ramos' presidency, I was a rookie reporter for PTV4. To us back then, he was endearingly called Tabaco for his signature cigar, giving him a distinguished and wise yet relatable image, reminding me of a respected, experienced Ilocano lakay. True to the image he exuded, many aspiring leaders sought his audience for advice, even after his term as president. Nais ko lang po ding gamitin ang oportunidad nito para ibahagi ang ilan sa mga bagay na nakakapag-alaala sa ating lahat kay FBR. Una, red ball pen. Early in the morning, his personal staff would bring all the morning papers to his desk in Malacanang. Whenever he noticed any complaint in the newspapers from the people, his special red ball pen is always ready to write instructions to the cabinet member concerned to help and resolve the issue. It was natural for him to attend to the problems of the common tao. Marahil, pareho po kami ng motto sa serbisyo. Kailangan aksyon agad. Lahat ng kaya niyang tulungan ay tutulungan niya ng walang pakundangan. He brings back fond memories of my father, who, like him, was also in the military as a member of the Philippine Constabulary. bibingka. Yes, bibingka. Madalas at mahilig makipagpulong si FVR sa mga LGUs nung siya'y namumuno. Lagi niyang iniambing ang serbisyo sa bayan sa cooking process ng bibingka. May apoy sa ilalim dahil kailangan ng partisipasyon ng LGU. Mayroon ding apoy sa ibabaw dahil kailangan ng tulong ng national government. Hindi aandar ang pamahalaan kung hindi nagtutulungan ng LGUs at national government. Hindi maisusulong ng tama ang isang pulisiya mula sa national government kung walang tulong at konsultasyon sa local government na siyang nakakasalamuha ang ordinaryong mamamayan. FBR was known for reviving the country's economy during his tenure. He stabilized the economy. He expanded access to quality basic services and facilities such as health, education, and the creation of jobs. In line with his socio-economic plans was his pioneering of the protection of the rights of overseas Filipino workers through the enactment of Republic Act 8042, or the Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipinos Act of 1995. To be truthful, Mr. President, my career as a broadcaster doing public service work was driven by this law. It became my number one tool in assisting thousands of our countrymen to avail of these protections from illegal recruitment and abuses from employers abroad. Hindi ko po matutulungan ang libo-libo nating kapwa Pilipino kung wala ang batas na ito ni Pangulong Ramos. As the most substantial evidence of this similar love for our OFWs, President Ramos was also responsible for brokering the safe return of Sara Balabagan. She was an OFW sentenced to death for murder in the United Arab Emirates. After ascertaining that she only acted in self-defense, President Ramos made sure that his safety returned back home so true justice is served. Walang may iwang Pilipino kahit mang sulok ng mundo. Ang kanyang iba pang kontribusyon sa bansa ay di matatawaran. Kaya naman, karapat-dapat lamang na siya ay ating alalahanin at bigyang pugay. FBR always assured us na kayang-kaya natin ito and gave his signature thumbs-up sign. In his parting, it is now our turn. Nangangako po kami sa tulong ng mga pulisiya na inilatag po ninyo, nakakayanin po namin ito. And we give you our 2 thumbs up. Mr. President Fidel V. Ramos, sumasaludo po ako sa inyo. Mr. President, with the permission of the good sponsor, I most respectfully move to be made co-author of this resolution. I thank you.
Thank you very much to distinguished colleague, Senator Raffy Tulfo. Maraming salamat po sa inyong sponsorship.
Yes, Mr. President, and we take note of the intention of the gentleman from Isabela to co-sponsor the measure. Mr. President, at this juncture, Senator Bato de la Rosa would like to co-sponsor the measure but ask this representation to just manifest that it be inserted into the records, Mr. President.
There
Next,
being no objection, the manifestation is recorded.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from Bicol, Senator Robin Hood Padilla. May I move that he be recognized, Mr. President?
We recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
Bismillah. Ginoong Pangulo, aking mga kasama at salupon ng pagpupulong na ito, sa ganap na ikawalo ng umaga kanina, nasaksihan natin ang pagbaba ng ating pangbansang watawat mula sa pinakamataas hanggang sa kalahati. Ito ay sumasagisag hindi lamang ng pakikiramay sa pagpanaw, ngunit lalo't higit ay pagpupugay at paggalang sa dating Pangulo ng Republika ng Pilipinas, ang kagalang-galang na Fidel V. Ramos. Mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, Hindi po maitatanggi ang personal na kaugnayan ko sa dating Pangulo. Mula pa lang sa pagiging kalihim ng kagawaran ng tanggulang bansa, ay pinuno ko na po ang ating general. Bahagi rin ako ng kanyang kandidatura at sa pagkapanalo sa pagkapangulo ng Republika. Bahagi rin si Ginoong Tabaco, kung siya po ay aming tawagin, sa aking paglaya mula sa bilangguan. Siya po ang nagbigay sa akin ng conditional pardon with parole conditions. Mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, ako po ay tumindig sa pulpito na ito, hindi lang para sariwain ang aming pinagsamahan, kung hindi para maisulat sa lathaan ng Senado ng Republika ang malinaw na kabanata sa kasaysayan ng inang bayan na inukit ng dating Pangulong FVR. Kailanman ay hindi po malilimutan ng inyong mga kapatid na Muslim ang 1996 Final Peace Agreement na kung tawagin ay Jakarta Accord. Ang usaping kapayapaan na nagbigay katuparan sa mga pangarap ng Bangsamoro, kasagutan sa ilang daang taon na pakikibaka. Dito, ipinanganak ang Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Si Pangulong FVR ay maituturing kasama ng ating mahal na Ginoong Pangulo na ama ng kapayapaan sa Muslim Mindanao. Ito ay isang ganap, isang katotohanan, isang pamana para sa lahat ng mga Pilipino, maging saang mang lupalop ng mundo. Ngayon po, mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, bilang panghuling bahagi ng aking parangal kay Pangulong FVR, nais ko pong ipagpatuloy natin ang kanyang naumpisahan. Mula sa kanyang bibig ay nabuhay muli ang pagkilala sa saligang batas noong 1973 na nagsasaad ng parliamentary form ng gobyerno. Sinikap ng dating Pangulong FVR na tayo ay magkaroon ng rebisyon sa saligang batas. Hindi sa ganang mapalawig ang kanyang termino, kung hindi masikatuparan ang pag-ulad na inaasam ng bawat Pilipino. Mahal na Ginoong Pangulo, hindi man nagtagumpay ang hakbang na ito ng dating Pangulo, naging matagumpay naman ito sa puso natin ang pagkabuhay ng mapayapang revolusyonaryong pagbabago. Ika nga ni Tatay Fidel, the parliamentary system would enable the people to throw out an incumbent government if it is seen as incompetent or corrupt in a peaceful, democratic manner. With a no-confidence vote by the majority in Parliament, even before the incumbent finishes his term of office. Mahal na Pangulo, ito po marahil ang gamot natin sa sakit ng ating lipunan sa kaka-people power. Dito po nagtatapos ang aking parangal at pagkilala sa isa sa pinakamahusay na Pangulo ng Republika ng Pilipinas. Ika nga po ni General Douglas MacArthur, ang nakatatandang sundalo, kailanman ay hindi namamatay. Sila ay maglalaho lamang. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat sa ating mahal na kapatid, si Senator Robin Hood Padilla, sa inyong talumpati.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, next to sponsor the measure, co-sponsored the measure is the distinguished gentleman from Davao, no other than Senator Christopher Bongo. And I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
We'd like to recognize our distinguished colleague from Davao, Senator Christopher Bongo.
Mr. President, I join the entire Senate in expressing my profound sympathy and sincere condolences on the death of former President Fidel Valdez Ramos. President Ramos is a true statesman who paved the way for our global competitiveness under his Philippines 2000 platform. As policymakers, the successful policies of his administration should become our blueprint as we aim to gradually emerge from the adverse impacts of the pandemic and regain our position in the regional economic arena. I join a grateful nation in sharing our grief with the family and loved ones of former President Ramos. Naalala ko po, kaklase ko yung anak niya. Hindi ko alam na una, anak pala ng Defense Secretary. We in the Senate must honor his legacy and continue his significant contributions to the country. It is for these reasons that I request to be made co-author of this Senate resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to our distinguished colleague from Davao.
Thank you. Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from San Juan, no other than Senator Jinggoy Estrada. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Our distinguished colleague from San Juan, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, is hereby recognized. And congratulations for your FPJ awards the other night.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I am one with the nation in mourning the passing of the 12th President of the Republic, former President Fidel Valdez Ramos. President Ramos will always be remembered as one of the most effective presidents in our nation's history. To borrow the words of my father in his brief tribute message to the late President Ramos. President Ramos was the first president to have given the Vice President with a significant executive job to do, when it has been a long-standing tradition in the Philippine bureaucratic setup that the Vice President is only allowed to perform purely symbolic ministerial duties and to just wait for possible succession to the office of the President. It was President Ramos who broke tradition and appointed his Vice President, then Vice President Joseph Ejercito Estrada, as Chief of the Presidential Anti-Crime Commission. And from then on, it has been the adopted practice of the elected President to appoint the Vice President to a concurrent executive position to help out in the delivery of the administration's banner program. During the time of President Ramos, the Philippines' distasteful reputation as the sick man of Asia has metamorphosed in the promising tiger cub economy of Asia. President Fidel Ramos was not only our president, he was a war hero, a decorated military serviceman, an advocate of peace, a statesman, a diplomat, and a public servant who has dedicated his life to the service of the Filipino people. Pinapaabot po ng inyong abal lingkod ang ating pumarubdob na pakikiramay sa ating dating unang ginang, Amelita Ming Ramos, at sa kanilang mga anak, at sa buong angkan ng mga Ramos, at sa kanilang malalapit na kaibigan at mga mahal sa buhay. With that, Mr. President, this representation would like to be included among the authors and sponsors of the pertinent Senate resolution filed, expressing our profound sympathy and paying tribute to the late former President Fidel Valdez Ramos. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, our distinguished colleague from San Juan.
Yes, Mr. President, as per the manifestations of Senators Tulfo, Go, and Jinggoy Estrada, Mr. President, and other members, with the permission of the sponsor, Mr. President, I move that all members of the Senate be made co-authors of this resolution.
There being no objection to the motion of the Majority Leader, the motion is approved. And before we approve the resolution, I'd just like to put on record that what we had discussed earlier in caucus about having a LEDAC meeting as soon as possible, I'd just like to put on record, under Republic Act 7640, it was Fidel V. Ramos, then President, who institutionalized the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council for smooth consultation and cooperation between the executive and the legislative. That was his foresight. This is his baby. And hopefully we can have the LEDAC soon, so we no longer have any problems with our measures with the executive department. Thank you. I just wanted to put that on record because we were just discussing this an hour ago.
That is very important, Mr. President, and thank you for reminding all of us about it. Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate or propose amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 2, taking into consideration PS number 73, 74, 75, 76, and 90, subject to style. So moved, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the Majority Leader's motion, there being none, PSR Resolution, Philippine Senate Resolution number 72, taking consideration PSR Resolution numbers 73, 74, 75, 76, and 90 is hereby approved and adopted, subject to style, with all members as authors.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
There being no objection, let's proceed to the reference of business.
Bills on first reading. Senate Number 101, providing for the automatic suspension of excise taxes on regular gasoline, unleaded premium gasoline, and diesel, amending for the purpose Section 148 of the NIRC as amended by Senator Poe.
Refer to the Committee on Ways and Means.
102, establishing the National Framework for Water Resource Management and creating the Department of Water Resources and the Water Regulatory Commission, defining their mandate, powers, functions, appropriating funds, and for other purposes, Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees of Public Service, Civil Service, and Finance.
103, reorganizing and strengthening the disaster risk reduction and management system of the Philippines, establishing for the purpose the Department of Disaster Resilience and Emergency Management, empowering the regional field offices, establishing coordinating mechanisms, strengthening community participation, appropriating funds, and for other purposes by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on National Defense, Civil Service, and Finance.
104, allowing and regulating the use of motorcycles as public utility vehicles, amending for the purpose RA 4136 and for other purposes by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committee on Public Services.
105, providing for a just and humane public utility vehicle modernization program with transitory assistance and services rendered to PUV drivers, operators, and stakeholders, appropriating funds and for other purposes by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Public Service and Finance.
106, providing a framework for the commuter-centered transportation policy, appropriating funds and for other purposes by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Public Service, Public Works, and Finance.
107, an act to regulate the rational exploration, development, utilization of mineral resources, and to ensure the equitable share of benefits for the state, indigenous peoples, and local communities, and for other purposes by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, Ways and Means, and Finance.
108, prohibiting discrimination on the basis of age, indigenous, racial, or ethnic origin, religious belief or activity, political inclination or conviction, social class, sex, gender, sexual orientation, sex characteristics, gender identity, gender expression, marital or relationship status, disability, HIV status, profession or occupation, health status or medical history, language, physical features, and other status, and providing penalties therefore by Senator Poe.
Referred to the Committees on Social Justice and Cultural Communities.
109, establishing a pandemic and other public health emergency preparedness plan, appropriating funds and for other purposes by Senator Binay.
Referred to Committees on Health and Finance.
110, establishing a safety internet education program in the curriculum of all elementary and secondary schools, Senator Binay.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education and Finance.
111, excluding 13-month pay from the computation of the taxable income, amending for this purpose Section 32B7E of the NIRC of 1997 as amended, Senator Binay.
Referred to the Committees on Ways and Means.
112, addressing food security concerns to integrating instructional gardens in primary and secondary school curricula and promoting the use of urban agriculture and for other purposes, Senator Binay.
Referred to Committees on Agriculture, Basic Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
113, establishing the National Coastal Greenbelt Action Plan, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Binay.
Referred to Committees on Environment and Finance.
114, creating the Environmental Protection and Enforcement Bureau under the DNR, providing for its powers and functions, appropriating funds, and for other purposes, Senator Binay.
Referred to the Committees on Civil Service, Environment, Natural Resources, and Finance.
115, strengthening the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation, repealing for the purpose PD 1467, and for other purposes. Senator Binay.
Referred to the Committees on Government Corporations, Agriculture, Ways and Means, and Finance.
116, an act to protect Filipinos from the harmful effects of trans fatty acids and for other purposes. Senator Binay.
Referred to Committees on Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship, Health, and Ways and Means, and Finance.
117, strengthening the conservation and protection of our national cultural heritage through an enhanced cultural policy, heritage education, and cultural mapping program, amending for the purpose the National Culture Heritage Act of 2009. Senator Binay.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education and Local Government.
118, providing for the regularization of punong barangay, Sangguniang Barangay members, Sangguniang Kabataan Chairman, Barangay Secretary, and Barangay Treasurer by Senator Binay.
Referred to Committees on Local Government, Civil Service, and Finance.
119, an act to develop, protect, and promote the livestock, poultry, and dairy industries and their value chain to provide for livestock, poultry, and dairy competitiveness enhancement fund and for other purposes by Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committees on Agriculture, Ways and Means, and Finance.
120, an act to develop and promote the yellow corn industry to enhance the availability of affordable and quality feeds, to provide for a corn competitiveness enhancement fund and for other purposes by Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committees on Agriculture, Ways and Means, and Finance.
121, establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in Baybay City, Province of Leyte, and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
122, establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in Talacogon, Agusan del Sur, appropriating funds therefore. Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
123, providing for a new charter of the Land Bank of the Philippines. Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committee on Banks and Financial Institutions.
124, establishing a national wetland policy, providing mechanisms for its institutionalization and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Finance.
125, strengthening the wildlife conservation and protection mechanism in the Philippines, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9147, providing funds therefore and for other purposes. Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Finance.
126, an act to adopt integrated coastal management as a national strategy to ensure the sustainable development of the coastal and marine environment and resources, and to establish supporting mechanisms for its implementation and provide funds therefore. Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform, Ways and Means, and Finance.
127, providing for the preservation, reforestation, afforestation, and sustainable development of mangrove forests in the Philippines, providing penalties therefore and for other purposes. Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Finance.
128, requiring new commercial, institutional, residential infrastructure projects in Metro Manila and major cities in the Philippines to install rainwater harvesting or retention facilities, providing penalties for violations and for other purposes. Senator Villar C.
Referred to Committee on Public Works.
129, institutionalizing and expanding the National Employment Recovery Strategy to a National Employment Action Plan and for other purposes. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committee on Economic Affairs.
130, strengthening workers' right to security of tenure, amending for the purpose Articles 106, 107, 108, and 109 of Book 3 and Articles 294, 295, 296, and 297 of Book 6 of the Labor Code of the Philippines as amended by Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committee on Labor and Employment.
131, providing for a permanent appointment to all casual and contractual employees of the government who have rendered the prescribed years of service and for other purposes. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committee on Civil Service.
132, providing for a wage employment assistance program for displaced, marginalized, and/or vulnerable workers, institutionalizing for this purpose the Tulong Panghahanap Buhay sa Ating Disadvantaged Displaced Workers program of the Department of Labor and Employment, appropriating funds and for other purposes. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committees on Labor and Finance.
133, expanding unemployment insurance benefits, amending for the purpose Section 14B of Republic Act number 11199, and for other purposes. Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committees on Labor and Employment, Government Corporations and Public Enterprises.
134, allowing the adoption of alternative work arrangements, amending for the purpose PD 442 as amended by Senator Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Labor.
135, allowing the adoption of alternative work arrangements in enterprises registered with investment promotion agencies, amending for the purpose Section 309 of the NIRC as amended and for other purposes, Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committees on Ways and Means and, Ways and Means and Labor and Employment.
136, providing protection to freelancers and for other purposes, Senator Villanueva. Labor.
One second lang. Yes, referred to Committee on Labor.
137, instituting the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committees on Labor and Foreign Relations.
138, stimulating the recovery, growth, and development of the micro, small, and medium enterprises for job generation and preservation, appropriating funds, and for other purposes, Senator Villanueva.
Referred to Committees on Trade, Commerce, and Finance.
139, prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or sex characteristics, and providing penalties therefore, Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committees on Women and Children, Family Relations, and Finance.
140, increasing the penalties for the detention of patients and cadavers in hospitals, medical clinics, or any other similar facilities on grounds of non-payment of hospital bills or medical expenses, amending for the purpose Republic Act 9439, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committees on Health and Social Justice, as well as Finance.
141, granting universal social pension to all senior citizens, amending for the purpose RA 7432 as amended, Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committees on Social Justice and Finance.
142, granting benefits and incentives to accredited Bantay Dagat and for other purposes, Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committee on Agriculture and Local Government and Finance.
143, recognizing the rights of natural ecosystems, populations, and processes and providing mechanisms for the protection and enforcement thereof, Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committees on Environment, Justice, Human Rights, and Finance.
144, providing free hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and other Department of Health approved dialysis procedures to all senior citizens by Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committees on Health, Social Justice, and Finance.
Senate number 145, an act against the practice of endo and contracting, amending for the purpose Articles 106 to 109, 294 to 296 of and adding a new provision to PD 442, otherwise known as the Labor Code of the Philippines, as amended by Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committee on Labor and Employment.
146, declaring a portion of the Philippine rice situated within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippine Sea as a protected area with the category of Marine Resource Reserve under the National Integrated Protected Area System to be referred to as the Philippine Rice Marine Resource Reserve, providing for its management and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committees on Environment, Ways and Means, and Finance.
147, expanding the grounds for dissolution of marriage, instituting divorce and setting the procedures thereof, providing protections to the parties to the marriage and its common children, amending for this purpose EO 209 of the Family Code by Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committee on Women and Children.
148, granting a maternity benefit to women workers in the informal economy, amending for the purpose RA 11210, appropriating funds and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committee on Women and Children.
149, increasing the salary grades of teacher. Can I pause? Finance. Sir, 148.
I'm sorry, we lack Finance. On Senate Bill number 148, it is referred to the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Finance. My apologies.
149, increasing the salary grades of Teacher 1 to Teacher 3 and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Civil Service, Basic Education, and Finance.
150, establishing an academic recovery and accessible learning program, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to Committees on Basic Education, Ways and Means, and Finance. There's an additional reference to business. Let's just continue.
Additional reference of business. Bills on first reading. 151, establishing a national energy policy and regulatory framework for facilities utilizing waste to energy technology, Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to Committees on Energy, Environment, Ways and Means and Finance.
152, providing for the national energy policy and framework for the development and regulation of the Philippine midstream natural gas industry and for other purposes, Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to Committees on Energy, Ways and Means and Finance.
153, an act to eradicate SIM card-aided terrorism and criminal activities, mandating for the purpose ownership, registration of all SIM cards for electronic communication devices, Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Public Services, Trade and Commerce and Entrepreneurship.
154, protecting consumers and merchants engaged in internet transactions, creating for this purpose the E-Commerce Bureau, appropriating funds, and for other purposes, Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to Committees on Trade, Commerce and Finance.
155, furthering local leadership and accountability in basic education governance to achieve quality, inclusive education to the 21st century school boards and school governing councils and for other purposes, Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committee on Local Government, Basic Education and Finance.
156, providing for a national policy and framework for energy advocacy, Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Energy, Civil Service and Finance.
157, providing for a national energy policy and framework for a clean and just energy transition in the country and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to Committees on Energy and Finance.
158, mandating the formulation and institutionalization of a comprehensive infrastructure development master plan, Senator Ejercito.
Referred to Committees on Economic Affairs and Finance.
159, an act amending RA 11235, the Motorcycle Crime Prevention Act by Senator Ejercito.
Referred to the Committees on Justice, Human Rights and Public Services.
160, amending RA 11223, the Universal Healthcare Act, Senator Ejercito.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Finance.
161, establishing specialty center in every region and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Ejercito.
Referred to the Committees on Health, Ways and Means and Finance.
162, amending certain provisions of RA 7305 or the Magna Carta of Public Health Workers and other purposes, for other purposes, Senator Ejercito.
Referred to the Committees on Health, Civil Service and Finance.
163, promoting the welfare of the barangay officials by providing regularization, salary standardization, and special risk allowance in times of state of emergency or calamities and during similar situations as may be declared by the national government, appropriating funds therefore by Senator Ejercito.
Referred to Committees on Local Government, Civil Service and Finance.
164, providing housing to public health workers near government hospitals and other health facilities and for other purposes, Senator Ejercito.
Referred to the Committees on Urban Planning, Health and Finance.
165, mandating the establishment of agri-food terminals and trading centers in every province, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Ejercito.
Referred to the Committees on Agriculture, Local Government and Finance.
166, granting retirement benefits to all elective or appointed barangay officials who have rendered a period of 9 years or 3 terms of public service in the barangay, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Ejercito.
Referred to the Committees on Local Government, Government Corporations and Finance.
167, allowing the use of motorcycles as public utility vehicles, amending for the purpose RA 4136 and for other purposes, Senator Ejercito.
Referred to the Committee on Public Services.
168, promoting the welfare of employees by defining rest hours, providing penalties for any violation thereof, and for other purposes, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committee on Labor and Employment.
169, amending RA 9522 to further define the baselines of the Philippine territory, including its maritime features, and for other purposes, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committees on Foreign Relations, National Defense and Finance.
170, establishing a rental subsidy program for informal settler families, appropriating funds, and for other purposes, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committees on Urban Planning and Housing and Finance.
171, establishing the Philippine Agricultural High School System, providing funds therefore, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education, Agriculture, Ways and Means and Finance.
172, allowing voter registration and voting by mail or other electronic means, and voting by overseas Filipino workers and seafarers, further amending RA 9189 as amended by RA 10590 or the Overseas Voting Act of 2013, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committees on Electoral Reforms, People's Participation and Finance.
173, protecting traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expression, and genetic resources, further amending for the purpose the Intellectual Property Code of the Philippines, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committees on Trade, Commerce, Basic Education, Arts and Culture.
174, an act amending the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 by reinforcing local government coordination and response efforts, and for other purposes, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committees on National Defense and Local Government.
175, expanding the coverage of the Commuting Act and providing incentives for telecommuting employees, amending for the purpose RA 11165, and for other purposes, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committees on Labor and Employment, Ways and Means.
176, institutionalizing the Filipino First policy in the government procurement system, amending for the purpose RA 9184, and for other purposes, Senator Tolentino. Finance.
Referred to the Committee on Finance.
177, allowing the use of waste-to-energy technology for electricity, fuel, and heat generation, and for other purposes, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to the Committees on Energy, Environment, Natural Resources, Ways and Means.
178, fulfilling the emancipation of tenants from the bondage of the soil, amending PD 27 and RA 6657, as amended among others, and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on Agriculture and Finance.
179, providing for the new Omnibus Election Code of 2022, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on Constitutional Amendments, Revision of Codes, Electoral Reforms, and People's Participation.
180, establishing the Young Farmers and Fisher Folk Challenge Program, creating for the purpose the Young Farmers and Fisher Folk Challenge Council, and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on Youth, Agriculture, Food, and Finance.
181, strengthening domestic healthcare manufacturing industries, providing for the protection against pandemic, and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Demography, Trade and Commerce, Ways and Means, and Finance.
182, establishing the Citizen Service Program, amending the National Service Training Act of 2001, and for other purposes, by Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education, National Defense, and Finance.
183, promoting open access in internet service, and for other purposes, by Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on Science and Technology and Public Services.
184, recognizing digital assets, requiring the registration of digital asset enterprises, the operators, and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
185, creating the Water Resources and Management Authority, defining its powers and functions, providing funds therefore, and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
Referred to Committees on Public Services, Civil Service, and Finance.
186, creating the National Resiliency and Disaster Management Authority, prescribing its powers and functions, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committees on National Defense, Civil Service, Ways and Means, and Finance.
187, granting the President of the Philippines the power to lower the rate or suspend the imposition of value-added tax on petroleum products for a limited period of 1 year in times of national emergency or state of calamity, amending for the purpose sections 106 and 107 of the NIRC as amended, Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
188, creating the Department of Disaster Resilience, defining its powers and functions, and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees on National Defense, Civil Service, and Finance.
189, providing for a free annual medical checkup for all Filipinos, by Senator Go.
Referred to Committees on Health and Finance.
190, mandating PhilHealth to develop a comprehensive dialysis benefit package, appropriating funds therefore, by Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees of Health and Demography and Finance.
191, amending certain sections of the Philippine Nursing Act of 2002, providing for an advanced nursing education program, by Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees on Civil Service, Health, and Demography.
192, establishing the rental housing subsidy program and providing funds therefore, and for other purposes, Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees on Urban Planning and Housing and Finance.
193, establishing a mandatory evacuation center in all cities, provinces, and municipalities, appropriating funds therefore, by Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees on National Defense, Public Works and Finance.
194, institutionalizing the transition of the government to e-governance in the digital age, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes, Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees on Science and Technology, Civil Service, and Finance.
195, creating the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, providing mechanisms for pandemic control, and for other purposes, Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees on Health and Finance.
196, providing for the framework for the establishment and operation of virology laboratories in the Philippines, creating for the purpose the Virology Science and Technology Institute of the Philippines, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees on Science and Technology and Finance.
197, providing for a Magna Carta for barangays. Senator Go.
Referred to the Committees on Local Government, Ways and Means and Finance.
198, defining large-scale illegal trafficking of dangerous drugs and controlled precursors and essential chemicals, imposing the death penalty, amending for the purpose RAU 9346, and introduced by Senator De La Rosa.
Referred to the Committees on Justice and Human Rights.
199, mandating the institutionalization of development, training, organization, and administration of basic reserve training corps in grades 11 and 12 in public and private educational institutions, further amending RA 7077 and appropriating funds therefore by Senator De La Rosa.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education, National Defense, and Finance.
200, an act institutionalizing the whole of nation approach in attaining inclusive and sustainable peace, creating the National Council to End Local Communist Armed Conflict and for other purposes by Senator De La Rosa.
Referred to the Committees of National Defense and Finance. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, just to give a heads up to our dear colleagues, only for those who have not submitted their list of committee members, may we appeal and ask our dear colleagues to submit the list as soon as possible, as we are anticipating the nomination of committee chairmanships and membership tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, August 2, 2022. So move.
Wala na ba? Kaya pa? Wala pang hearing. There being no objection to the motion of our distinguished majority floor leader to adjourn session, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, August 2, 2022. Have a pleasant evening, everyone.
Thank you.